Impact of influence.
Covering true crime throughout the Southeast.
Hello, friend. Matt Harris and Seton Tucker. Always grateful that you're spending time with us. Impact of Influence is on Facebook and also on a YouTube channel. Easiest way to get to the YouTube channel is through the Facebook page. Please subscribe to that. We need subscribers to keep that thing going and support our sponsors. We're part of the Evergreen Podcast Company. We'd rate and share and do anything you can do to spread the word about Impact of Influence. All right, in this episode, we're going to be talking to the mother of Jaden Phillips, who tragically passed away at the age of 19 in May of 2020. As is the case with the death of Caden Moses, there has not been any resolution for the family. Many questions remain about Jaden's death and the investigation by law enforcement. See, just tell about the day of the accident.
So 4 days before his death, Jaden had been involved in an accident on the Congaree River in Richland County, South Carolina. Jaden had gone camping with his dad and some others to celebrate his 19th birthday. Now, the day of the accident, Jaden's dad stayed back at camp while Jaden went to the sandbar with another group. Now, it's unclear what happened between the time of the first 911 call that was placed at almost 8 p.m. and a short video that was taken an hour before the call. Matt, break it down for us.
This is what we know. At 7:57 p.m., a bystander at the boat ramp called 911 to report there was a boy with blood pouring out of his head. This was the first 911 call placed. An hour before the call, a man named Irvin Eckroat, who would be driving the boat that he was in, is seen in a short video drinking alcohol, and you can hear Jaden telling Irvin Eckroat, "You are effed up." Sometime after the video is taken, Eckroat and Jaden Phillips get back in his boat and head to the campsite. Eckroat's boat was followed by another boat, which is important, driven by Eric Langen. What does the incident report say?
So the report states that Eckroat was allegedly cutting the river, I guess going back and forth at probably a fast speed, and Jaden was struck by a low branch that he did not see. Now, Langren, the person who was following the boat, says that he came around the river bend and he saw trees shaken. And Langren tells investigators that he observed Jaden slumped over with his arm hanging out the side of the boat, and Jaden was gurgling, trying to breathe. Now, at this point, neither man calls 911 or Jaden's father, who was waiting for him back at the camp.
The guy who's driving the boat, Eckroat, and the guy who was following that boat, neither one report.
And so at this point, they head back to the boat landing, which was approximately 15 minutes from the place where the accident occurred.
Okay, so they get to the boat landing at Bates Bridge. Jaden's unconscious on the floor of the boat, bleeding profusely from the head and struggling to breathe. The floor of the boat is littered with empty beer cans, blood, vomit. It took some time for emergency services to arrive. I think there was some confusion.
Yeah, there was confusion as to whether this accident occurred or where they were, whether it was Richland or Kershaw County. And when the first responding crew arrived, they were not really aware of the severity of Jaden's injuries, and they didn't have a third person on the ambulance, which was required for a safe transport. So really a lot of valuable time was lost between the people not calling 911 when this accident first occurred and the lack of accurate information.
Responding officers from the Richland County Sheriff's Office did not question the driver of the boat, Eckroat, about his drinking or even ask his name, which is kind of crazy.
Odd, very odd.
It does not appear as if a field sobriety test was administered or a breathalyzer was taken. The boat also was allegedly not secured by law enforcement as evidence. Additionally, SCDNR, which is South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, who's responsible for investigating boating accidents, was not officially notified, and no charges were brought by law enforcement.
No, it was really weird that DNR was not officially notified. Somebody had called them, but again, this was a very chaotic situation. We're dealing with multiple law enforcement agencies, and there are so many questions that still remain. The first one, what happened in the hour from the time that video was taken of Irvin
We're talking about it being
being
up.
effed up and all of those things, and 911 was called. So it's approximately 15 minutes from the sandbar where Irvin and Jaden were.
They were hanging out.
And where the accident happened. And there's another 15 minutes from where the accident occurred to the boat landing.
It's 30 minutes.
So there's 30 minutes, but the timeline, it doesn't appear as if a lot of investigation has taken place into this timeline. What happened in this hour between the video where Irvin was, seen drinking and this 911 call was placed?
By a bystander, not by either of the people driving the boat.
Not by either of the people driving the boat. Also, do the pictures in the story, line up with what happened? Fitz ran a story.
As in Fitz News, yeah.
Fitz News ran a story, and there are pictures of where this accident occurred, and there was actually like a whole, not just a branch, there was a whole tree that had fallen across the river. So there's questions about exactly if these stories match up.
And there's questions about the injuries. Are they consistent with the scenario that was given to law enforcement? One of those questioning injuries was the Richland County coroner. In August of 2023, a coroner's inquest was held, which again, gave no resolution.
And I attended this. And when I attended, it was really odd. This coroner's inquest, and I would encourage everybody to go back and listen to this episode, is really not something that happens very often. But there were law enforcement officers as well as Irvin Eckroat who were subpoenaed to show up for this hearing, and they just didn't come.
And this is 3 years after the accident, approximately.
Right. This happened. This happened in August of 2023.
And you have a subpoena and you don't show up. That seems that there should be a punishment for that, right?
I didn't know that was optional.
The episode that we did originally, the whole episode on Jaden, we did back in August of 2023. There will be a link in the show notes, but if you want to look back, it's episode 139, another boating tragedy, and it aired, as I just said, in August of 2023.
Right. And honestly, this is a tragic situation that is compounded by a lack of resolution for the family. And Jaden's family is introducing legislation called Jaden's Law, which has been pre-filed by the Kershaw County Representative Jermaine Johnson. And what the family hopes is to ensure that this is the reality that they're living doesn't happen to other families. So we are pleased to have on with us Sabria Phillips. Her son, Jaden, died tragically in a boating accident on the Congaree River in May of 2020. And we actually did an entire episode that we'll link in the show notes on his case and a lot of questions that are surrounding the investigation and exactly what happened involving his death. And so Sabria has introduced a bill to kind of help in the future investigations into boating accidents in South Carolina. So Sabria, tell us why you felt it was important to introduce this bill.
Well, for obvious reasons in terms of death will never negate the love that we have for our son. He is still our son. He will always be our son. And though we cannot fix what occurred back in May of 2020, we have watched very similar circumstances unfold over and over again. So the premise is making certain that, well, first and foremost, everyone is someone's child, regardless of the age. So everybody matters. We have this wonderful thing called the Constitution. We all have right to due process of law, victims and criminals alike, of equal protection of the laws. And so our purpose is to make certain that at the end of the day, if a life is lost, then prayerfully that family can have some closure in knowing what occurred, and that victim still has their voice and has access to due process, to protection, and some form of justice.
So a lot of the confusion around Jaden's death investigation involved DNR, South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, being involved, and also Richland County Sheriff's Department. What happens with boating accidents when there is more than one agency involved? They don't communicate, right?
Correct. I think that is the problem, is that no one, well, I won't say no one, but many do not appear to know what to do, who handles what when, and the way that the current laws are written, if anything occurs on the waterways, that is South Carolina DNR's jurisdiction. However, many times, just based on the sheer number of investigators that are available with the Department of Natural Resources, which are few and far between, that means that another agency is going to more than likely be first on the scene. So we want to very much kind of eliminate the confusion and make very clear, concise responsibilities known, so that regardless of who shows up, people are clear on what their responsibilities are.
Like what? Okay, what does specifically the bill say about that? Let's say what will the bill do? Let's say there's a fatality on the water or off the water. What does the bill say?
So the bill essentially says that, well, let's take it a little bit. Let's rewind a little bit. First and foremost, 911. That dispatch is going to be required. There were multiple calls bounced around in Jaden's case, and the information appears to be pretty unclear. So if we can make some specific questions, such as, is a person able to breathe on their own? But in regards to a boating accident, did this incident occur on the water? If the response is yes, then dispatch would be required by law to notify DNR.
Because right now it is just up to whatever the 911 operator thinks works.
And it didn't happen for several days later in Jaden's case. DNR was not notified, and valuable investigative information was lost in the period of time from when the accident occurred and DNR was notified.
Correct. There was a DNR officer notified that evening, but again, there was very little, appears to be very little clarity into actually what was going on. But that's 911. In terms of law enforcement, Jaden's law would essentially require whoever responds, if someone is deceased, if someone is traumatically injured and they are unconscious, they must secure the scene and notify the proper authority, be that the coroner, be that SCDNR, but secure the scene. Once evidence is gone, and we've seen that 3 times now, Jaden Phillips, Caden Moses, Chase Newman, once that evidence is gone, there's no getting back what is lost.
And those are just the cases that we know about.
And they're not all water related.
They're not all
correct.
So
water related.
Your case is not just about water. It is about any scene where there's
process of law. I still have yet to find anybody to be able to answer, like, how do unconscious or deceased individuals, how do they access equal protection of the law? How do they access due process of law?
Now, I'm guessing that
the only way that happens is an investigative process, period. Because I, as a mother, can sit down with you and give you a list of charges for the deputies, for the offender. But guess what? I can't charge anybody with anything. So the only entities that can, they must be required to do so.
So a big component of Jaden's law would be making sure that crime scenes are properly secured.
secured and investigated. It does not matter what is reported to 911. Very few and far between do criminals sit down and say, you know what? I've had 24 beers. I can't see straight, and I've just annihilated somebody on the water. Now, keep in mind, in Jaden's case, the driver of the boat did not call. It was a bystander who literally was unaware of details other than to say what physical injuries he saw. But in general, most criminals do not factually report what has occurred. So we need those people that are boots on the ground, regardless of what's reported to 911. Oh, hey, they fell off a ladder. Oh, sorry, an overhanging limb struck him in the head. We have to be able to secure the scene and, to the best of our abilities, investigate to make sure the facts align with what the call reports, because that victim, deceased or unconscious, cannot verbally give you a clue as to what occurred.
Well, I want to get back to the fact that it complicates things more when the accident occurs on the water, because it involves more agencies. And I was speaking to a victim's advocate, and she said that really it's very unusual for her to see a case, a BUI, boating under the influence case, prosecuted. One of the things I'm seeing in this law that you'd like to pass is a requirement for a breath test to be performed on the driver of the boat. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in South Carolina, you are free to drink alcohol while boating. The law states it is illegal to operate that boat while under the influence or being intoxicated. Well, we know the only way to determine whether someone is intoxicated is a test, be it a breathalyzer or be it blood. In the event that someone is deceased or, again, fatally injured to the point that they are unconscious, then we need to either be able to exonerate the driver of that boat to show that alcohol did not, in fact, play a role or a part, or we need to be able to hold that driver accountable if he or she is intoxicated. And again, you can't go in a court of law and say, hey, I have this guy on video downing 24 beers. It doesn't matter unless you have a factual based lab value, be it blood or breath. It doesn't matter.
How does a boating accident differ from a motor vehicle accident with blood requirements? Yeah.
Well, my understanding is, in terms of a roadway, there has to be probable cause in order to breathalyze. But something as basic as, field sobriety testing could give you cues as to whether, alcohol played a role. Certainly when alcohol is reported and documented, again, there's that thing called due process. Once that driver is allowed to leave, there's no justice for the victim or the family. So, in Jaden's specific case, on the roadway, anytime there is an accident, there's a lot of agencies that don't investigate. Highway Patrol actually will be contacted, but that agency would secure the scene, would notify Highway Patrol, would maintain the scene until Highway Patrol arrives.
So, okay, so I would imagine that each county, each agency, they have their procedures about securing the scene, whether or not to take a breathalyzer or a blood test of people who are driving a vehicle. So you want to make this blanket so every agency would have to follow it in South Carolina. What is it written in there what the consequences are if they don't? Because I'm guessing that some of these places have those in place and they just don't do it.
No, our family did not focus on consequences. We will have to kind of lean on our lawmakers to assist us, and I very much want this to be a team effort. This is not a house divided. This is what we're doing is not working. So how do we make South Carolina waterways safe?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also just promoting communication between sheriff's office, local law enforcement, and DNR, because there's questions about whether DNR, who is in charge of lots and lots of other different things, fishing licenses, and are these the people who are best equipped to investigate a fatality on the waterways?
I would very much appreciate being able to see some true data. In fact, I'm concerned that we don't really have a lot of factual data. I'm not sure that Jaden's case or Chase Newman's case is even reported in any data. And again, those are just the ones that I'm able to call by name that we know about. But I would be interested to see the number of deaths SCDNR investigates annually. And out of those deaths, how many homicides do they investigate? South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy is the starting point for law enforcement in our state. If their careers, so to speak, begin here, they start with the same basic training. They get into subspecialties, meaning they're good at what they do through experience, boots on the ground, and recurring.
But I think that's fair for the state to decide and be clear about, does DNR have the manpower? Do they have the training? Do they have the resources to investigate fatalities and major crashes that involve major life-threatening injuries? Do they have all of that? You're not really clear, right? You've asked and asked and asked, and you're not really clear about that.
Well, all I can speak to is our personal experience. And I can, I'm trying to be careful. I can tell you that when you got coroners involved that are saying, no, there's a problem, we need the investigative body to have been aware, not vice versa. You see what I'm saying? Like there has to be a skill set there, and DNR is valuable.
Oh, absolutely. We are not knocking DNR.
No, I know, but I don't want to ever give the appearance that they have a place. Kershaw County is rural. We have waterways. People hunt consistently. They're valuable. What I'm asking is to put in just sheer layman's terms, if you have two physicians that are equally trained, highly qualified, one's a dentist, one's an OB, you don't defer to your dentist and ask your dentist to deliver your baby, because that is not what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, let's sit down and let's look at some sheer numbers and see, what kind of recurring training they have and deaths and homicides.
Mm-hmm.
And do we need as a state to provide them with additional manpower opportunities to ensure that people are well versed in what they're seeing and what they're not seeing, and know how to properly investigate specifically deaths and homicides?
And why not work together? I don't understand that part, but
yeah, right. Yeah.
I would love, again, to be able to say that there's not a house divided, so to speak, but it very much appears like, okay, well, first and foremost, the way South Carolina law is written right now, it states that anything occurring on the water is solely DNRs.
Hmm.
So we need to kind of work on that.
Yeah. Well, yes. Right. Yeah.
There are valuable men and women in law enforcement that know what they know, that do what they do, reoccurring, have a fresh set of eyes. Again, when we get to the point where the coroner is saying we have missed this is too far gone, so I would like to see some either maybe a specific task force, maybe SLED comes in anytime specifically there is a death or someone is fatally injured.
Waterways or not.
Injured. Yeah.
Correct. A death is a death.
Yeah.
An unconscious victim is an unconscious victim.
If people want to get involved and support that bill, how do they find you? How would you like them to reach out? Maybe there's a politician that's hearing this, that sort of thing. How can people contact you? We'll also put it in our show notes, but what is the best
Sure. Well, I've been speaking with a couple of House of Representatives for Kershaw County. One is Jermaine Johnson. The other is Mr. Wheeler. And to be honest, I have not given much thought on how someone can contact me.
Well, we'll
that
put it
does
in our
not need
notes.
to be included in the show. But I mean,
We don't want to spring that on you.
I'm so cautious right now because not everybody's intentions
are good.
Well, you can also reach out to Impact of Influence on Facebook.
Yeah, reach out to us. We don't want to put you in a bad situation to have just people and you have to protect yourself and your family. So we completely get that, but we would like, and I know as you would, to get the word out about Jaden's
and
law.
there are going to be opportunities like this, when this goes to a committee and there are committee hearings, subcommittee hearings, like, yes, and I will be glad to reach out to you guys because we will need people reaching out in full force. Like, we are one family impacted. We know there are others, and there is power in our voices. We are grateful to have a legislative body, but we have to remember that they only have the power that we give them. Mm-hmm. And so together, we need to step up and say, hey, what we're doing is not working. We have to fix this. And if we're not willing to seek change, if a life lost with no form of justice, with absolutely no clear idea of what occurred, that to me in this day and age is unfathomable. And it's heartbreaking to sit back and not only deal with immense grief and loss, but all of the questions that run through your mind consistently. Like, there is no reason, as technologically advanced as we are, as skilled as our men and women in law enforcement in South Carolina are, there's no reason. You don't get to choose when you do your job.
And you don't want to see this happen to another family.
I have watched it happen to another family. And what I am saying is, you're either part of the solution or you are the problem. I refuse to be part of the problem. We cannot continue to lose lives in the same manner over and over and over and over again and just accept it as status quo. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. There is nothing rocket science about any of this. I can tell you that our lives, in many ways, ended when we lost our son. I don't want any other family to suffer indefinitely, nor for there not to be any form of justice. when a life is casually taken and no explanation is even required. It can't happen again. And these are the type of people that are willing to use their voice and say, this isn't about condemnation. This is about change.
I understand. I mean, it's powerful. You're doing a great thing. Hopefully, this bill will move along, and the agencies involved will have more accountability, and there will be a clearer path as to what's supposed to be done in these kind of investigations. Thank you so much, and everybody. Of course, if you want to
Thank
reach
you.
out, go to Impact of Influence on Facebook or the YouTube channel, and we will get your messages to the correct people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Yes, sir.
Of course, there's the hope that out of a tragedy comes something positive. It would make sense that when there's a boating accident, there is a very laid out way for law enforcement and which law enforcement to do the investigation.
No, and I just go back to the case of Caden Moses. You know, his family is also seeking resolution. There's been just nothing that's come out of his death investigation. And you just think of these families during the holiday season who've lost their loved ones, and you just hope that something positive can come out of it.
We will put in the show notes the Caden Moses episodes, the YouTube channel episode of Caden when we talk to Caden's mom. Really well done. You'll see family pictures and certain jewelry that she talked about that she passed along. So if you want to check that out, it will be in the show notes. Thank you all. As always, we are grateful that you hang out with us, and we'll talk soon, friend.